thank you all for coming. I guess I should move this up a little. Everybody can take their seats. So, Jean is going to be in the back. I had sent the rules to the candidates so they all know sort of how this is going to try and run. And there's going to be a time limit because we have a lot to get through. So Jean's going to be holding up that 30-second card, and I just need to make sure that nobody's standing in front of her so that the candidates can see that 30 seconds. Can you all see it? See? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so before we truly get started, I just wanted to welcome everybody here. The Scituate Chamber of Commerce and the Scituate Historical Society are responsible for putting this on. My name is Linda Ferguson. I'm from the Scituate Chamber of Commerce, and we have people here from the Historical Society. You can't hear me? No, I can't. Okay. So we're all going to learn to talk really close to the microphones. The Candidates Forum, just so everybody's aware of what this is not going to be a debate. The audience is not going to interact with the candidates. It's strictly a question and answer. It's a chance for people who are seeking public office to express their views openly so community members can understand their positions and make informed choices. So please, no cheering, no booing, no anything like that. For those of you who didn't pick up the rules when you came in, there's no advertising for any candidates inside or out. I guess that's it. So we are also having this video for Scituate TV. It will be shown on Channel 8. It will also be shown on YouTube. The Chamber of Commerce will have a link, and then I'm sure it's going to be shared all over the place. We have 3 candidates up here tonight. The first one is Karen Canfield. She's running for selectman. We have Patricia Lambert, who's running for planning board, and Keith Wallow, who's also running for selectman. Just so we're all on the same page, the position for Board of Selectmen is to oversee the efficient and orderly operation of the Board of Selectmen's office. As chief executives of Scituate Town Government, they perform all administrative duties of the Board of Selectmen, including the annual appointment process, licensing, bi-weekly public meetings, annual and special town meetings, and serve as a link between the Board of Selectmen and the residents of the town of Scituate. The planning board is all about planning for land use. They follow zoning bylaws, administrative site plan reviews, basically oversee the use of the land by business developers, residents, to ensure that it meets codes, regulations, and works for the town. So, I guess without further ado, I just got cards. Each candidate is going to have about 2 minutes to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get right into the questions that we have up here tonight. Sorry, 3 minutes to introduce themselves, 2 minutes to answer the questions. Okay. Okay, so for this thing, we'll start left to right, and then it'll just keep reversing each question. So Karen, if you'd like to start. You just turn it on.
How's that? Is that good? Yes. It's so great to see so many people. First, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Historical Society for hosting tonight. And thank you everybody for coming tonight and for attending and for watching on our community television. I'm seeking this position because I care passionately about our community's future. I am confident that my proven town experience, combined with my professional expertise and education, allows me to uniquely address the critical issues facing our town today. Too often we elect officials that promise change in action and do not possess the practical experience or proven track record to get the job done or even know how to begin. There have been many ideas floated in this campaign for new ways to improve Scituate. Deciding which of these ideas are viable and at what cost requires thoughtful and experienced review. The completed library project is a clear clear example of my ability to get the job done. I've been involved since day one when the library sought a grant to build the building. I built consensus to gain town approval. I worked with town and state officials to secure the grant, supported the drive for public donations, and devoted over 20 hours a week for the last 2 years to ensure that the building was not only beautiful and functional, but was delivered under budget. For those who don't know me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I have lived in Scituate for 24 years, and I moved here with my husband. We raised our 3 beautiful children, and they're all proud graduates of Scituate High School and love this community as much as we do. I graduated from Boston University with a degree in public relations, and I hold a master's in urban and regional planning from the London School of Economics. My work career has included senior positions in communications, finance, commercial real estate, and currently I'm a writer and an editor. I have served in many organizations in Scituate, and I am proud of my accomplishments and the respect I've gained along the way. Our top priority now is to find a new town administrator who reflects our values and has the financial and managerial skills to meet our goals. This will be the first step in improving confidence in town hall. Communications between the boards and the community must also be improved. I have the skills to accomplish these goals. Our recent building projects, while all necessary, hit us hard in our tax bill, and we need to balance future investments within the community that we can realistically afford. Top priorities are the senior center, expanded playing fields, water and sewer improvements, and waterfront protection. My finance experience will help us assess these investments and guide creative ways to reduce the tax burden wherever possible. Together we can accomplish our goals. Together we can guide Scituate's future to reflect our community's spirit and our values, and I would be honored to serve as your selectman.
Thank you. Tricia?
Hi, my name is Patricia Lambert. I'm running for the alternate seat on the planning board. If anybody knows me at all, it will be through the Ellis Estate and conservation issue that surrounded our public safety complex in the remaining school committee owns a portion of the Ellis Estate. However, Scituate is a lot more than just conservation land, and we have to make sure that everybody here has a little piece of paradise, either where they live, where they work, or they work. And our job at the planning board is not to make new laws, it's to make sure that the laws that are sitting on the books are followed to a T, that nobody gets any special treatment, that we don't get favors to anybody. We definitely are an overseer board. And if we don't like what we have, then it is up to us to go to the town and tell them that we would like some bylaws changed. We need to have things changed. We have a great board right now. It's really well balanced. I'm a retired librarian, so that gives me a lot to do when I always get this silence. So go reply what happened in the past. And I'm very happy to do that. But I do think that we have a great balanced board. We're going to move forward. We are coming out of a very tumultuous financial time right now. And it is up to the planning board to not really keep us on the straight and narrow, but to help the board in the town make the very best decisions for the future of Scituate. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Scituate Historical Society for hosting this event. I look forward to hearing the questions from our audience, as it is you that really matter. You are the people that vote the selectmen into their seats, and it is you we should be listening to. Your opinions and questions should format what happens in this town. Lately, it seems that people are not heard. Their thoughts and ideas seem to be brushed aside with an abrupt, "You're out of order." A little about me. I am 54 years old, married to Colleen Litchfield Wallow. We have 4 beautiful children, Douglas, Tamara, Abigail, and Rebecca. Yes, our last 2 are named after the Bates girls. We also have 3 grandsons, Caleb, Sam, and Jacob. I own a mooring and dock company based in Scituate called Harbor Mooring. I've been the owner, manager, and laborer for 11 years now. Prior to owning Harbor Mooring, I was a district manager of a worldwide food service company with a $30+ million budget and 50+ managers directly reporting to me. I mention this so folks know that I have a background to manage the budget, the size that the selectmen help to manage now, Just as important is the fact that I can manage the employees and people of the town. Well, I think the current TA has done a great job with our finances. There is much more to our town than our finances. There are people in the form of people, of employees, and citizens. I've spoken to hundreds, maybe thousands of people in Scituate, and morale seems to be very low. I know personally the way I have been treated is unacceptable. I am sure most of the town employees feel the same way. I am not naive, and I understand that you cannot make everyone happy, but the way folks have been treated is not acceptable. Our firefighters are a prime example of this treatment. I look forward to working hard to bring morale back to an acceptable level. The town has many projects in its near future: gates, senior center, ball fields, seawalls, foreshore protection of our entire coast. While all these projects are very important, we need to ensure we do not price folks out of our town. I attended a luncheon at the Congregational Church today, and the people that I spoke with were very concerned. They were concerned if we have any more overrides, they would not be able to stay. Well, they want a senior center, and they understand it will come at a cost. They want us to be considerate of them and how they will survive when the taxes go up. The town has spent large sums of money lately, and some not prudently. We need to be careful. Transparency is very important to me. It is a way of life for me. I will give you honest opinions on what I know, and when I state something, it will not be, oh, I support that and that and that. When I support an issue, it has been thought out, and I've looked at all sides. When I speak, that is my word. No hiding behind closed doors, pre-meeting discussions. All discussions should happen in public and have public's input. I have other ideas on transparency that I'll share on my Facebook political page. So I won't go into them here tonight, but please feel free to contact me at any time. I am sure we will have a wide array of questions this evening, and I look forward to answering them to the best of my ability. If there is something I am not versed in, I will tell you that I don't know, and I will get back to you. Thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts and concerns with us.
You and me. Thank you, candidates. All right, so we do have a lot of questions, it's nice to know a lot of people are thinking we're along the same lines, because a lot are repeats. So I will start with the senior center first, and this is to the selectmen only, it's selectmen candidates only. And the first part is a yes or no answer. Do you support building a new town senior center?
Yes.
Keith? Okay. So you both support the new senior center. So knowing that, you will have to recommend to residents that property taxes will need to be increased to pay for it. And the center options are between 9 and 13 million. How do you plan to pay for that? We'll start with Keith. Yes, I would use the mic.
Is it on? I think there's lots of ways we can pay for it. I will be putting out a post in Scituate Monthly, so I'm not going to share all of them. But there is money coming in for mitigation on one of the major properties right now, and one of the major projects in the town. And some of that money could be diverted to the senior center, from what I understand from talking to the people that are there. We can do things like sell the rooms, the furniture of the rooms, to different corporations and let them fund it through that. I still don't understand where the numbers from 9 to 12 million or 9 to 13 million are coming from, since Rockland built their senior center 3 years ago for 4 million or 3.5 million. And it's virtually the same size, it's a little bit smaller. So I think we really need to look at those numbers. I do think there'll be an override, and I did speak to people today about that. And half the room that I spoke to today were concerned that they would rather not have a senior center if there was going to be an override, because they're afraid that they'll be priced out of town. A quarter of those people left said, we don't care, this is the site we like, we want it to happen. And the last quarter said, we really want it to happen, but we're afraid we'll get priced out when that happens. Corporate sponsorship will be a big thing for it. Grants will be a big thing. Again, there is money out there right now for some mitigation that we can get to. I think that's all.
All right, thank you. Karen?
how are we going to pay for this? It's a very good question. The question is, how are we going to pay for it? The senior center, right now it's in the process of being figured out how much it will cost, where it will go, what the elements are. To speak to the point of why it would cost more than $4 or $5 million is the funds, the study that's just been done incorporates all of the costs that will be incurred at each of the sites. So if it goes behind gates, that means we have to relocate some of the playing fields. There are an all-in cost, which is a responsible way of looking at how much it's going to cost, so we can make an informed decision when it comes time to make that decision. There's still a lot of work to be done. Everyone should do the Council on Aging survey as soon as possible, because that's an important element. Mitigation funds that Keith mentioned, this is the decision that Board of Selectmen is always faced with. There's a finite pie, and there are certain requirements that we need all the time, and we need to best use those funds. Those funds might be better served for building playing fields adjacent to Wampatuck, or building an on-site sewer treatment plant, which would address other problems in our town. Private fundraising, I think, is a wonderful idea. We have worked very hard in the library. We have the former chair of the foundation here. It took 5 years to raise $1.5 million, and they're still working hard to get to the $2 million. So while it's certainly an element, we need to look at the most comprehensive way to get a building the most efficient way, and look at all of the different ways to find a source for funding. There will have to be an override, and our goal, I would hope, would be to make that as small and as impactful. One last thing, I know I'm almost leaving, is to me, one piece we can look at is if we take the outdoor space for the senior center and use it for recreation for the entire town, that might make it eligible for CPC funding, which would reduce an override cost.
Thank you. And that actually leads us to the next question. Since both of you said yes to supporting the senior center, do you have an idea of which of the proposals you agree with? And please explain your factors in supporting that decision, i.e., it's least expensive, location, convenience, public transportation, whatever those things are. So Karen, if you would like to go next.
I personally, of the choices that are being considered right now, like the idea of centering the senior center on the common somewhere. I think that it is the grounding of our community, and we have the library, we have central housing, soon we'll have additional housing, that it seems to me that that makes the most sense. Purple Dinosaur, I think, is a non-starter. It doesn't have any of the elements that the seniors need. And the Driftway, while right now seems the most cost-effective at the moment, it doesn't incorporate the seniors into our town center.
Thank you, Karen. Keith?
I think I agree with Karen. I think I like the site behind the library. I have to disagree with something she said a minute ago about the cost being $12 million, and that's because of site preparation. There isn't ball fields to be moved there or anything, and it's still a $12 million price tag on that site. And we're going to lose a lot of trees. And I know that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but it does to a lot of people too. So I think I'm behind that one. I don't understand why we did a study and we came up with 4 sites, and the seniors were very excited about those 4 sites, and all of a sudden the 5th site got added back in. So that's a little concern to me. The gates, wing of the gates, not behind the gates, was added back into the survey. So kind of wondering why that happened, but not sure. So if I had to pick, it would be behind the library, but not at $12 million. I just can't see spending $12 million on it.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you for segueing into the next subject, Gates. So knowing that Gates Middle School has recently been turned over to the town from the school committee, what would you like to see done with the old Gates building and the grounds now that the school no longer has control over it? Keith?
I think the rec has already moved in there. I think the plan is there to move town hall there and to move the senior center there. I think it's being worked, and I think that's what people are leaning toward at town hall. That's my opinion. I'm speaking to many people. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it's a great building, but maybe we should sell it. Maybe there's $3 or $4 million there that we can use to do one of these other projects. Or maybe we do rec and we do try to figure out something with town hall. But then you're talking, if you're doing town hall and a senior center, then you're talking a $20 million override, not a 6 or 8 or a 10. So it's going to be a tough decision, and it's not one building. You can't just say Gates is this, because there's like 5 other buildings that are involved in making that decision. It's town hall, it's Gates, it's rec, it's senior center. They're all rolled together, so it has to be made as one giant decision, not just what are we going to do with Gates.
Thank you, Keith. Karen?
Before we make any final decisions on Gates, the town needs to revisit the master plan and think holistically about not only Gates, but a potential location for the senior center and what will become of the town hall site if the offices are relocated to Gates, and where we will put our playing fields. I do think that the Gates building is the core of our community center and should remain town property. Although the reuse study recommended renovating the space, I think the costs need to be reviewed again once a plan is in place, a holistic plan is in place. I would also explore potential of enhancing the common and reducing the impact on taxpayers by attracting, we took that site and perhaps reworked the design, included innovation space, included retail space. Maybe we attracted junior college to cohabitate that space and to share in the costs. Then we could have a comprehensive plan in our town center that preserves that beautiful building. And is that me?
No, that's okay.
And brings us a product that will serve our children as well. Selling that site is I think, short-sighted. We also need to acknowledge that on that site are at least 2 historic buildings that, certainly we wouldn't want to see rolled up into a condo development. At least I personally wouldn't.
Thank you. Since you both seem to think that maybe at this point keeping Gates is an option, what would you, obviously, sort of you suggest a little bit of what you use for, but do you support using CPC funds to rehabilitate the building? So, Karen?
Well, that's a complicated question, as in a lot of the financing decisions. I think CPC funding used appropriately to rebuild the field, to preserve some of the historic elements makes sense. To use those funds as a basis for bonding and using those funds as going forward, which I've heard, I don't know if anyone has heard about this. So there's some talk that you could use that stream of income in order to bond and get additional funding. I think that would not serve our town well. I would like to see what the finance director has to say about it, but those funds are in place to improve many things, not just one building. And I would be hesitant to tie them up for years and years to come.
Thank you, Keith.
Back to one of the comments again. It's great to say that we're going to do retail and we're going to do all that stuff there, but it's still a $20 million override. So I'm not sure how we're going to get that through anyway. As far as CPC goes, I'm okay with using a portion of CPC for it. Not tying up all the money that CPC has into this project and having it go on forever, but I'm okay with a portion of it going into helping out.
Thank you, Keith. This question is for Patricia. What do you see as the biggest planning issue that the town faces? What do you see as the biggest planning issue that the town faces?
The biggest issue for the town as a whole, I think, is transparency and a sense of, I think the biggest issue for the town is a sense of the lack of transparency that we have, the overall feeling that the common citizen does not feel that they are being listened to.
You know, this is a planning,
And
like a
the
planning
what
board
I
issue.
would tell you, it would be the senior center and what to do with things. Those are the 2 biggest
All right, thank you. Okay. Sewage in North Scituate. Many people are supportive of making North Scituate the next area to connect to sewer in order to improve the village business area. However, the next priority district to get tied into sewer under the growth and connection control plan are the tree streets, so Poplar, Hazel, Walnut, etc., off of Beaver Dam Road. There's about 300 homes there. So do you support moving forward with the expansion in North Scituate over the other residents who are next on the priority list, and if so, why? I can't remember, I think Keith, I think it's you, sorry.
I honestly think we can do both, and I've said this before at the last forum we had. There's a huge spillage happening right now in the clay pipes that are leaking in the seawater. And it's such a huge amount that if we get these fixed, I think it'll make a difference in what the capacity is, and we should be able to do both projects. Now on top of that, I don't know if everyone knows this, but when the MBTA put their mitigation money in over here in North Scituate, all the plumbing and pipes have all been laid. They're all there, and they're all ready to go. From what I understand from the plan, we need 2 pumping stations to make it happen. And there's actually a site over there right now that's got a proposal on the table that's doing some building, and they've offered as mitigation 1 of the 2 pumps. So we only have to come up with 1 pumping station to make it work over in North Scituate. And like I said, the rest of the pipes have all already been paid and paid for by the MBTA. So I think we can do both.
Prioritizing those 2 sites is very difficult because obviously people are waiting and there's a great benefit, and I hate to be the one that has to say what we had to choose. We absolutely need to replace the clay pipes and stabilize the sewer plant so we can really identify how much capacity there is before you can actually take the next step. From an economic development standpoint, in trying to reduce the impact of our taxes on residents, when 95% of our income is, our revenue comes from households, not from businesses. I think the North Scituate area, and as well as the Greenbush, have to be made priorities, and we need to bump that up and bring sewer there, because the potential for North Scituate for development and expanding both affordable housing and businesses is enormous, and it will serve the town for the long run if we pursue that. You know, the sewer, we'll probably get to sewer and water, but that's a macro question that really has to be addressed it touches everything that we're planning, everything that the planning board has to look at.
Thank you. We had a number of questions about opioid abuse. So there's 2 questions here. One is, now that the federal grant that funded FACTS is running out that subsidized this program, do you support continuing to fund the FACTS program as part of the town budget process? And if so, how do we pay for it? Karen?
100% do we have to continue with the FACTS program. It has made impact in this town. The work that Ann Galvin and her team has done has been extraordinary. There's no denying that we've improved things in our town. To fund it, honestly, I hadn't anticipated that question, and I would have to really stop and think about it. But I would think for that category of funding and for that kind of program, I would be surprised if there were not state and private foundations that would be willing to raise their hand. Our program here is a model for throughout the state. It's been adopted throughout the state. I cannot imagine that there aren't many resources, and that's something that I've had a lot of experience with. I volunteer with the Boys and Girls Club in Boston, and we look for those kinds of matching priorities to fund things like that. So no, I haven't investigated it, but I think that category A has to be done 100%, and I think we would be able to find funding for it.
Thank you. Keith?
I have to echo what she said. We have to continue it. It is a program that is looked at in the entire state as one of the most successful programs for this. So we have to figure out a way to do it. Excuse me. Not 100% sure how we would fund it, but as Karen said, I'm sure there's there's some kind of state funding that will still be available, even though they're cutting some of it. So we have to figure out a way to make up the difference to keep this program running.
Thank you. Schools. There are significant school repairs needed for our high school and 2 elementary schools. How do you propose paying for those repairs, and what is your timeline to address this issue? Keith?
I think we're going to be closing at least one of the elementary schools soon. And I think, my opinion, my kids went to this school and I would hate to see it closed. But if we had to close the school, I would say maybe Cushing, because we could use that football field since it's right adjacent to the high school. So if we had to close one, it would be that. They're in deplorable condition right now. And one of the things I cut out of my opening statement was something about preventive maintenance that I talked about at the last time I ran this room. And I don't see it getting any better. And it makes me totally nervous with all these new buildings we have that I'm just hoping that preventive maintenance plans are put in place. I haven't seen them yet. How we're going to fund it? Again, I'm hoping there's money coming from the state. It's going to be another override if we have to do these schools, and they have to get done. I mean, Cushing's got asbestos tiles on the floor and falling from the ceilings. They need to get fixed, and they need to get fixed soon.
Thank you, Karen.
Again, as all decisions our Board of Selectmen has to approach, that we have a finite pie, and deciding how to use it best and how to address the services that we need to provide are key. For our elementary schools, some of the schools are unsafe and they need to be repaired. The school committee, I know, is looking very carefully at consolidating schools, and that's an important step. I think that that might be an opportunity to have a location that we might actually want to sell and have more money for the town to do some of the improvements. One of the wonderful things that has happened in the last few years is that we have put into place in this town capital planning, 5-year capital planning that not only is for the whole town, but each of our buildings and departments now is planning ahead. And we've made great strides in taking care of what we are investing in. And that obviously is very important and needs to continue, because now we're paying for things that may have not have been so expensive had we maintained what we had. Somebody wrote to me in the campaign, they were concerned about, we keep buying new shoes when all we need is a shoelace. Well, the capital budget is our shoelace, and we have to keep investing in those as well.
Thank you. The town created an OPEB, which is Other Post-Employee Benefits Fund, in 2011 to cover the cost of the unfunded liability of the town's future health care costs for employees and retirees. The unfunded liability is approximately $61 million. Since 2011, the town has allocated over $800,000 from its budget into it. Do you have a financial plan for our long-term underfunded OPEB fund? As selectmen, what do you propose the town needs to do? Karen?
Huge. This is, whoever wrote this question, you're spot on. Our health insurance, our retirement portion of our annual budget is 6% of our annual budget. The health insurance is 7% of our annual budget. Those are essentially fixed costs. What we can do as selectmen is to direct our new town administrator, our finance director, and to work aggressively to find the best location for those funds to reduce those costs as much as possible. As far as funding, we've made great strides in funding those, which has improved our bond rating. And honestly, I would rely on the very capable shoulders of Nancy Holt to assess how we're going to fund the deficit, because it affects our bond rating, it affects our credit, it affects pretty much everything that touches our financial world.
Thank you. Keith?
I don't think there is an answer out there right now. And I think the number is 63 million, not 61 million. And it's a $63 million deficit that we have right now in the retirement and healthcare section. I've spoken to Nancy about it, and she's working diligently to try to figure out where to come up with this money and what we're going to do about it. And as far as I know to this point, there is no real answer on where it's going to come from. And as Karen said, whoever came up with this question, I've only had one person ask me anything about this the whole time I've been talking to people. I don't even think people know that we have a $63 million deficit that we have to deal with at some point. So it's an amazing number, and when we're talking about $20 million for a new gates and town hall and $12 million for this, $63 million is the number that we need to figure out what we're going to fix. And I don't think any of us have the answer right now.
Thank you, Keith. This question is for Patricia, or Patty is the person with the card. With all the construction and building in town, how do you see the town handling the serious water and sewer issue?
Well, as we all know, our sewer system is almost going to fail. I did sit at a board of selectmen's meeting where I was told by a sitting selectman that we had to take the toll road property because we need that money, to bolster our wastewater treatment plants. I don't really think that's a good way to run a fiscally responsible town, to make sure that you have money in the background to finance what you already have. The water issue that we have, we showed last year that we can aggressively save water. There's a plan before the Board of Selectmen to raise the reservoir, which will be absolutely perfect. Once we fix the I&I for the pipes, that should help tremendously, which is what they talk about, the infiltration through the clay pipes. And I have to tell you that the issue with sewage is a really interesting issue because what it allows you to do, it doesn't contain growth. And anybody who's been here for a long time, when the town, by necessity, extended sewage to the cliffs, what happened to the cliffs? They got really built up. We've lost the water, our access to the ocean. They're beautiful homes, but they do draw on us. I think that the planning board has to aggressively look at how much building is allowed. And people need to be aware it's not how many bathrooms you have, it's how many bedrooms you have in your house. That's how big your septic system, your access to water. I think that's a really, that's something that the planning board is grappling with now. I think it's now come to smack us right in the face. And the present board is making very concerted efforts to make sure that we do not overextend the town with water issues.
Thank you. There's been a number of questions regarding transparency on the Board of Selectmen, and that executive sessions are often used during selectmen meetings. Do you think they are appropriate? If no, why? Or if yes, when do you think it is proper to use executive session? Which one? Keith? Yeah, Keith, sorry. I'm going to pay attention on
I think transparency is a huge issue in the town. I think executive sessions are way overused. I think executive sessions are supposed to be only for land swaps, negotiations with contracts, not to hide to talk about things like the Ellis estate, which, as far as I'm concerned, there was a lot of hiding, and just, I'm sure we'll have questions about Ellis hopefully at some point, but the fact that we just went through all that time, in 3 months, and we got back the same plan that we had before, with the exception of an extra 6 months for the town if they wanted to extend the time to get the land back in. How much money did we spend on lawyer fees for 3 months of that time? So I think that there has to be transparency. And part of my whole thing with transparency is, and I hope Karen can stand with this, we've both been to 100 meetings in the last probably week. There's nothing more annoying to me than going into a meeting and sitting there with an agenda and nothing else. And you're looking at just a bullet point. So one of the things I would propose for transparency is that when they submit their agenda, which we have to do a couple of days before the meeting, they also submit a file with all the documents that are being discussed that night, so you can open it up on your iPhone and you can watch it as you go along. I said, there's nothing better than sitting in a meeting and listen to everyone talk back and forth about anything, and you can't see it. So I think that there's been some hiding going on, and I think it needs to stop. And I think it needs to stop now.
Karen?
So there's two really important elements to this. The transparency of the Board of Selectmen and how they conduct the town's business. And the second is how do we improve communication within our communities. And I agree that if we can fix that piece, we'll have rooms like this of people who are engaged and supportive, and that only helps everything, decision-making and engagement, and that we get decisions that are supported by everyone that is affected by them. On transparency, there are very strict rules about when the Board of Selectmen may exercise executive session. I know that there have been a lot of them, but there have been a lot of contentious issues that require legal counsel to the Board of Selectmen. They can't meet privately, they can't have behind doors conversations, and the only way they can have those private conversations is to formally post an executive session. As far as structural changes for communication, I have some ideas about this. So as he says, we've spent both of us have spent a lot of time getting to know things we didn't know and learning things that are important to town. There's not one person at Town Hall that I understand that is responsible for all of the boards and minutes and meetings. Every department, every board is responsible for posting those and getting them up themselves. That's an easy fix that we can make sure that we're not burdening our volunteers and get that information out to people. And I do believe that there are real solid structural things we can do to improve communication.
Thank you. The Ellis Estate. As of now, 14 acres of the Ellis Estate remains under the custody, care, and control of the town school committee. In 2016, at a fall special election, a citizen's petition passed requesting that all remaining Ellis property be placed in the care and custody of the Town Conservation Commission. What do you think should happen with the remaining 14 acres? And if the school committee opts to convey it out of its name, what would you do as a selectman with the property? What would you do as a selectman with that property? I think Karen here.
Well, the Attorney General's office and the town, as Steve alluded to, came to an agreement to this dispute, I think it was yesterday. The letter was released. It's up to the town to comply to that agreement, and I would hope that on Monday when the school committee meets, they'll begin the process of releasing the school department's portion of the stake, and the replacement is found as quickly as possible for the land that the public safety complex was built on. The remaining, it's pretty clear what the state expects the town to do, and it should all be put into conservation. I think, to speculate about the intent and process of approving in the first place doesn't accomplish anything. What we need to do now is to make sure that communication around town issues is vastly improved and that engagement by more people in town-wide decisions is encouraged.
Thank you. Keith?
They didn't really come to an agreement. They agreed to disagree in that letter. There was no agreement. The Attorney General thinks one thing happened and the town thinks something else happened. And as far as the 14 acres go, research the deed, they never left conservation, so I'm not sure how they are expected to be put back into conservation when they never left conservation. So whatever is happening with the land, with the school committee and their vote, and the fact that it's been 8 months, 9 months, and the town voted to bring it back, and it never really left. And it hasn't happened, I think that's atrocious, to be honest. If the people in the town voted to do something, and for 8 months we haven't been able to do it, and we still haven't even got a vote from the school committee to supposedly give the land back to conservation, even though it's in conservation. That's not right. The whole thing is not right, and it needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed right away.
Thank you. back to you. The town and the fire chief promised us a second ambulance. How do you propose we accomplish this? Where do we get the funding?
We have to have the second ambulance 24/7. If you watch the videos on YouTube from when the town was selling the safety complex, we were promised to have 2 ambulances. For people that don't know, our first ambulance is out at night, because during the day it is staffed. We do have 2 ambulances during the day. At night it's not staffed. If that ambulance is out doing whatever, we have to call another town. So it either comes from Norwell or Cohasset or wherever we can get one from. And a lot of times that adds 10, 12, 15 minutes onto the route and getting to the person. And if you're having a heart attack, 15 minutes is a life. So the fact that we don't have it right now is not right. And I did look into this and I did figure out the funding. I think we could almost pay for it on its own. Because again, if you don't know, whenever we send an ambulance out, I believe the number's $750, it might be a little higher or a little lower right now. We get from the insurance company as a town. So every trip that they make, we get that much money. Now to fund these extra firefighters that we need to make this ambulance happen, will be just about funded by that $750 each trip. So again, I'm not sure why we're not doing it since we have the funding and we have a way to get the money. So it needs to happen. We're gonna lose someone, and it's gonna be because the ambulance wasn't there and we had to wait for someone to come from out of town. It's just not right.
Thank you.
The town needs to have 2 ambulances 24/7. Most of our calls are medical, so that's, to me, needs to be done. The current budget for 2018 is level funding for staffing at the fire station, but the stated goal is to have this coverage. I know that ongoing negotiations are the core of this dilemma, and we cannot delay the service any further. I believe the town needs to look for intermediate funding solutions, which is another, you gotta look at the pie and see where you can find it. But we could also approach the proving ground developers as a possible source of funding and coverage. They're looking to do some things to help the town. They're looking to develop, to put a 55 and up community. This is a natural fit to ask them to help contribute to these funds. But it needs to be done. It needs to be done as quickly as possible.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on residency as it pertains to the Scituate Fire Department?
That is a very important question. A lot of our staff, our fire staff who serve our town well, do not live within the currently allowed zone of the residency clause of their contract. And for many years, that wasn't an issue. In the current negotiation, they've been given 1 year to amend that situation. Those rules are in place because they're for safety. They're for recalls, they're for, if we need a firefighter, we need them to get here not in 35 minutes, but in 10 minutes if that's the case. They're there for real reasons. My take on that is that this is, that particular clause has been amended in many, many communities. It's unreasonable to have, as we're a coastal town, we need to have a larger area, but that's something that the fire union needs to have put into their contract so that they are no longer vulnerable to anybody saying, hey, you're not within the zone. I think it's an addressable problem, and I think the fire unions are the ones that have to pick up the mantle on that, and they've been given a year under the current agreement to resolve that matter.
Keith?
I have a pretty strong opinion about this one. The residency clause says that you have to live within 10 miles from your door to the border of the city you work in. It's been 27 years since it's been enforced in the town of Scituate. Now, and this is my opinion, and I said earlier, if I have something to say, I'm going to say it, so I'm just going to say it. The firemen were putting up some posts on Scituate Monthly, and the TA didn't like it. And I have the documents that were sent back and forth. She actually went to them and said, stop posting on Scituate Monthly, or I'm gonna call the residency clause. And that's basically what the document said. So it was just short, as far as I'm concerned, of blackmail. It really was. And I've never been in a union negotiation, and I don't know what happens behind those closed doors. But if you have had a non-issue on the table for 27 years, how can you all of a sudden call it because you don't like something that's going on? I have no respect for that decision from the town, and I don't think it should be back on the firefighters to make this decision. I think it's a mutual thing between the firefighters and the town, and it needs to be fixed. When she wrote that clause and gave it back to the firefighters, 7 firefighters would have lost their jobs the next day if it had been enforced. 7 firefighters that have been here, one of them for 19 years, without an issue.
I do think that the residency clause is like a statewide
It is.
fire thing, so I don't think she wrote it just to be clear for facts.
Well, again, that's your opinion. I read the document and I know what she wrote, and she was going to call the residency clause if they didn't stop doing what they said they were going to do.
Okay, but the question is, how do you feel about the residency clause, which is in the contract? So I guess if we're to understand you don't want it in there. I mean, is that the...
It shouldn't, if you haven't enforced something in 27 years, how do you plan on enforcing it now?
Okay, so we'll go with no. All right. In the past 6 years, the town has been able to obtain $17.6 million for foreshore protection. At present, there is approximately $50 million needed just for seawall repair. 3 projects on Oceanside Drive and Evan Foster Road have been completed to the tune of $10 million through loans and grants. How do you propose we as a town should be addressing the remainder of $50 million of seawall repair? Keith?
The same as we've done the rest of these. Nancy has done an awesome job getting grants, and with Kevin Caffey, he's been working with her to get these. There's no way the town's going to come up with $50 million to do this. We may be able to help, but it has to come from grants, and the grants are out there. They're going to keep coming. I know there's new ones coming. It seems every day she's making an announcement that she got another grant. So I think between her and Kevin, we'll continue to do what we need to do. There's a big one coming in Humrock right now, which I don't totally agree with the project, but there's a grant coming to help pay for it. So the way we're going to pay for this through grants and money.
Karen?
Yes, abandoning the coastline is not an option, and it is also something that the town can't afford on its own. Luckily, we do have a team in place. We have our wonderful coastal resource officer who works hand in glove with our state rep and the folks in coastal zone management at the state house level. And they have been aggressive about making sure that we have everything in place in order to fund what we can when we can. That is our best effort. That's our best goal right now, is to continue to make sure that Nancy and the Coastal Resource Office team has all of the resources they have to pursue correcting the seawalls and funding additional efforts.
Okay. So some of these might be a little repetitive, I can't go through all these cards so fast. Mining has been engineered and permitted for beach re-nourishment phase in 3 years. The cost of this project is $10.5 million. At present, the town has been able to obtain $3 million grant towards this project this year. Do you believe the town should go forward with this project? And if you're, yes, how do you propose to pay for it? If no, why not? Karen?
Yeah, the way that that funding is approved by the state houses, they will only approve $3 million at a chunk. According to Nancy Durfee, who is our guru on this, that the plan is in place, it's been permitted, it's been approved, and that we need to reapply every year for those additional fundings. So we have every expectation that every year we should be able to receive the grants for the next $30 million chunk. If something changes at the state level, we'll have to readdress that. But at the moment, that's all we can get, and that's the plan.
Thank you. Keith?
Can I say ditto?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the answer. It comes every year, you can get up to $3 million, and she has the grants all ready to go. redo when she's ready next year.
Great. And then, you may have alluded to this already, Keith, the North Humrock roadway elevation and dune nourishment is a project proposed for Humrock costing $9 million, including the engineering and permitting costs. Do you believe the town should go forward with this project? If yes, how do you pay for it? If no, why not?
I'm not sure about the project, because you said I did say that earlier. They're going to raise the road, which I understand is going to keep the water from coming in from the South River, which is important. But they're also going to put a dune in front of the houses that's going to be 4 feet higher than the existing seawalls that are there. So some of these houses don't have seawalls at all. Some have seawalls with little cement porches on them. So when they do this project, they're building a dune that's going to be 4 feet higher than those walls. So these people that have these homes are going to be sitting on their patios looking at a stone and sand wall in front of them. And on top of that, my concern is, and I said this the other night, maybe it'll work great when it first goes in there because it'll be high enough so that the waves break over it. But what happens in 2 years when the dune starts to break down? What happens in 4 years? They're going to be making it with rocks that we all see come over the seawall every time there's a storm down at the lighthouse. So if you have something that's 4 feet above your house or above the wall next to your house, and the ocean's just throwing those stones over the dune that's going to be made, I'm just not totally convinced that's the answer. I do think there's an answer that could be tried here, and I did say this at the meeting, the coastal meeting. Gotta go quick. There's something called wads out there, which are these cement barriers, for lack of a different word, and they break the waves before they get in. And they actually even re-nourish the beaches instead of us spending money to re-nourish the beaches every year. They've been tried in Virginia and down south, and they're looking for a test site in the Northeast. And I think we're the test site. We can get a 1,000-foot wad set up for $1 million right now. And we could get it funded by the DP. Takes that more, but
Sorry, Karen. I know. Yes, go ahead.
We need to do everything we can to protect our coastline and protect the homes and businesses that are affected by the coastline. And our team of engineers and coastal studies and everyone has worked very hard to put together comprehensive plans. The work done in Humrock was a result of many years of environmental and engineering analysis. It's unfortunate that it may, affect someone's enjoyment of their property, but you got to choose that over having your house washed away. There's, unfortunately, we live on the coast and we have to make these choices. As far as different options, the wave attenuating devices, for anything and any activity that we can try to find to ward off the sea, because it is, we're a coastal town. Unfortunately, in the coastal erosion survey that was completed last year, those were looked at, and our tides and the level of our water are they're not conducive. It's probably not going to be too effective. If we can get somebody to pay for it to test it, that'd be great. But I think that the plan that's in place from the 2016 coastal erosion plan, we've been marching along that path, and I think it's very considered, and we should continue to work on that.
can I follow up there?
Well, you'll probably be able to follow up to the next question because it's the same exact thing, so. Sorry. Representative Cantwell tried to convince Beacon Hill to improve are they WADs or WADs? WADs, pilot project for protection in Massachusetts, and apparently it was denied. So how would you go about trying to get him or get Beacon Hill or get the town to improve funding for such a pilot project? So do you want to jump in there?
Sure, thank you. I think Mr. Campbell's going to try again because we've spoken about this. And Karen's facts were correct, but I don't agree with the representation where they came from. The people that are building these these dunes and making these things happen are against the wards because this is all like political stuff back and forth. They're against the wards because the wards re-nourish the beaches. So every 5 years or 8 years or whatever the number is, you don't get another $10 million fund from the towns because they're being re-nourished. So these people that are doing these other studies are doing everything they can to make sure that these things don't work. Now, yes, the tides are different here than they are in Virginia, but the tides are different from Virginia to the other places that they have them, and they've adjusted the size of the water in each one of the places that they've done them, and they've worked all the way up the coast up to Virginia. So I don't see why we can't be a test site to see if we can make these things work here, and how many hundreds of millions of dollars we'll save going forward, because we don't have to be re-nourishing beaches and rebuilding dunes and redoing all these different things. Now, the permitting is a nightmare, and the permitting is different here than it is down in Virginia and further down the coast, North Carolina. But it can happen. And there's no reason why we can't try to make these things happen. And I just don't agree with the facts that are coming in because they're coming in from one side and not being seen from both sides.
Karen?
So the question is, how do we get Jim Campbell to fund this? As I said, I don't think any idea that is out there that can possibly help protect our coast should be abandoned. If we think that there's an opportunity to try something and we can find a way to do it, I think we should absolutely pursue it. As far as where but we have to proceed with what we have and what we have funded. So we have a plan in place that is working as far as getting grants to pay for things. So they can be done on parallel tracks, absolutely, and I think that Nancy Durkee does a wonderful job at thinking sort of globally on these issues. So, yeah, I mean, we can try everything, but we need to act where we can really have actual life.
Is the harbor master supposed to oversee the waterways? So why do we have a police boat in the harbor? Karen?
If you don't, he's served on waterways. Why is there a police boat in the harbor? Is that the question?
Well, I guess maybe it is, like, if the harbor master is supposed to oversee
Oh, okay.
waterways, if you agree to that, then why is there a police boat in the harbor?
Right, so I'm the library lady, but this is what, here's my 2 cents on this. The police department has been trained in skills that the harbor master's staff may not necessarily have as deep an understanding of. If you've got somebody on a mooring and they're husband and wife and it's a Saturday night and they get into a fight, you need a domestic officer to come out and be available to help in that situation. The police department also can augment enforcement of the rules that waterways have to implement. But there are a lot of, and there's also the many other trainings that our staff, the police, have that if we can keep people safe in the harbor, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Keith?
The harbor master and the assistant harbor master are licensed to carry, and they're gone through all the police training, so they can take care of domestic disputes and that kind of stuff out there. I don't have an answer why there's a police boat there. I've been trying to figure it out since it came in. The enterprise fund paid for the boat. The enterprise fund pays for the salary of the policemen. The police budget pays for their gas. That's the only thing they pay for. And usually, and I'm out there a lot, because that is where I've worked, usually if there's an accident or an issue, both boats come at the same time. So it seems pretty redundant to me, and it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. I don't know if the plan somewhere down the road is for the police to take over the harbor master's office, which could be. That's how they do it in Marshfield and Hingham and a few other local towns. But I don't know why we're spending that money. It's coming out of the enterprise fund, and the enterprise fund is shrinking every year. And it's just an expense I don't think we really need right now.
Thank you. Patricia, there is a new position in town and an individual was hired as the Director of Planning and Development. What do you see as his 3 top priorities? Or her, I don't know.
Sit down, his name is Brad Washburn.
Okay.
Scituate is really, it's such a great opportunity because he comes from the physical management side. I think that he is going to, hopefully, we're going to be able to coalesce planning board, conservation, and zoning, and work very closely with the planning and development to make sure that we don't get off-the-wall development, that everything stays strict. And one of the issues that we have is the town is constantly siloed into all of these individual groups. So we don't have any person to coalesce all of that. And I'm hoping that's what Mr. Washburn is going to do for us here.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions regarding conflict of interest. So both of you have had either held elected or appointed or whatever positions in town. Karen, your work as a library trustee and building the town library. Do you see any conflicts of interest if you were chosen to be the next selectman?
No, I currently work as a writer and editor, and I'm all paid up on my library fees, so I can't see of any conflict as far as serving as a selectman.
And Keith, similarly, your mooring business receives funds from the town through the waterways. Does this represent a conflict of interest? And how are you going to address this issue should you be chosen the next selectman?
I don't know, that word sounds kind of funny, like I receive funds. We do a job for the town every year. We take in and out the floats. We take in and out the floats at Jericho. And it's around $5,000, just under $5,000. And if it's a conflict of interest, my company will stop doing it. When the time comes, if that happens, I'll speak to an attorney and find out if it is still a conflict of interest. And other than that one job, I don't have any other jobs that I do with the town that I receive money for.
Okay. Town meeting turnout is low at best. Although I'm psyched about the turnout tonight. Do you think it is time for a charter review and move to a representative form of government? Keith.
I definitely think it's time for a charter review. I'm not sure that the current selectmen totally support that, but I think it's time. And I don't think we can answer that second question until we do the review and we figure out, who's going to do the review and what their recommendations are, and then we can look at it and figure out what needs to be changed. There are things that need to be changed.
Karen?
Yeah, this is definitely in my wheelhouse because there are many components of the existing charter and the related bylaws which are simply outdated and at worst don't serve the town anymore. I recommend that the lengthy process of a thorough charter review to correct both the little and the enormous issues should be revisited. The last one, I believe, was 2003. There are small issues like, why are we selectmen? And there are big issues that we need to talk about. Is town meeting still an effective way to govern our town? These are big things. Of real concern is, on the short term, is we need to define the authority our town administrator has under the charter to ensure that the day-to-day running of the government reflects our values and our priorities.
Sometimes I think you guys know what's coming next because you lead right into it. So what do you think, obviously a new TA is going to be hired for the town. What do you think should be his or her first priority? Karen? Sorry.
I think the top 2 priorities for the new town administrator is to get to know our incredible staff and boards and committees, whether it's by a survey or individual meetings, because that's the character and the strength of our town. And that will also go a long way in improving relations and making sure that the town administrator understands what great progress we've made in this town. The Other huge piece, of course, is our financial house. We need somebody that has a complete, thorough understanding of municipal finance and what our priorities are, because it's a delicate balance. Every decision, every dollar we make is a delicate balance of where it's going to come from.
Thank you, Keith.
I think bringing morale back to town is going to be a big job for whoever comes in. Like I said, I've spoken to hundreds of people in the town, and the morale really has been damaged by the current town administrator. I think transparency is a huge issue, and I think that one needs to be addressed right away. As long as Nancy doesn't leave, I'm hoping the finances will run fairly where they are right now. I'm a little concerned with the fact that we have 3 people doing the search, and I just hope that whether it's Karen or I, that they don't rush into it and try to put somebody in before we get in this. At least we have some input on what's going on with the position. Because I just don't think the 3 people that are there right now are gonna.
All right, that's your opinion, and I appreciate that, but the question was, what do you think should be the first priority of any team?
Transparency.
Okay, do you? All right, so the golf course. As of this fiscal year, 2018, the bond for the golf course is paid off. Estimated annual review of revenue from the course is going to be about $380,000. What do you think the town should do with the golf course? Keith?
I don't really think they should do anything. I think it's a great old golf course, and I think it should stay right where it is. I think it's great that money's going to come back in, and we're not going to be paying it anymore. There are some things that need to be done for upgrading and maintenance, but I wouldn't make many changes over there at all. I'll leave it the way it is.
It's terrific that Mom's retired. I had a gentleman stop me. I was standing at the dump waiting one day, and pulled over and he said, "I want to talk to you about the parking lot at Meadows Walk." And I did not know until he told me this, that the lot is being funded, by the town and DPW. It isn't part of the golf enterprise fund. And I thought that was a little strange because it services the parking lot services that asset to the town. So on a little thing, I would like to see that addressed so that it is part of the whole facility and those funds can be used to improve that lot. I agree that a lot of people love going down to the golf course, and it's a great draw to the town. It brings people from out of town. We have a great vendor now in the cafe, and I think it enhances that area and it should stay.
The transfer station. Between the pay-as-you-throw and the cost for a sticker, do you think it is time for the town to consider curbside pickup? Karen?
We're back to talking about the finite pie. I'm not that familiar with the history of the transfer station, but my understanding is that this was an area when we were trying to make ends meet, that it had to, that they went to the pay-as-you-go arrangement. If we went to curbside, that's an additional cost that comes from someplace else in our budget. And I don't know if that's the right answer. I know people would love that service. All of that service. But I think it would fall into the cost of some other service in town. And I don't know the answer if that's affordable.
I would love to see curbside again in the town. All our surrounding towns, most of our surrounding towns have it, and our taxes are in line with everyone else around us, so we're right in the middle, actually, of the towns around us. So I don't understand why we can't have it. So hopefully when the time comes, we'll be able to look through the budget and figure out exactly where that's coming from and why it was stopped. And if that's true and we can't afford it, then what we'd have to do to try to bring it back. Because I'd love to see it back.
The town last year suffered a serious water shortage. It is presently seeking to raise a reservoir water to increase the volume that it can hold. What other things do you think, as a selectman, that the town can do?
I heard some people say we never had it. We do have some people that come here and collect. So when I said that we had it, that's what I meant, because both my neighbors collected. Water's pretty interesting. I just had a meeting with someone the other day. There's a couple of places where we could actually get water right now that we're not looking at. So when the time comes, if this happens again in the plans, this was the question, right? We're going to get more water.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get off on that.
I know, they were bad.
There's a place called Hope's Pond, which we were looking at buying at one point, and then we used the money to buy Pier 44 instead. And there's a huge aquifer there that we could get into. And there's also a land swap that we just did recently that's close to the Cohasset line. And if we did a well there, the aquifer that is actually on that land is part of Cohasset's. So Cohasset seems to be the one that has all the water, and we try to make deals with them to get it. So if we could dig into their aquifer at the same time, I think that's another good one. And the plans that they have, making the dam bigger and making the capacity for bigger, those are all great things, but I think there's other things that we could do, and I just named two that I just learned about within the last week.
Can you tell me who Hope's Pond is?
Hope's Pond is the cranberry bog over on Old Oak Bucket. And like I said, we did have a chance to buy it at one point, and we decided to put the money into Pier 44 instead.
I think the plans to raise the reservoir is a great step in the right direction. They've also, the water department is working really hard to bring, there were some disused wells back online, and those are gonna definitely help. This is part of the greater plan, talk of how do we plan for future development and future draw on our capacity. It's a twofold question. We have to address that question as well as the capacity issue. I hadn't heard that any of the mitigation funds have been explored for the Pope's Pond site, but you know, anything we can do. And it's like as I said before, everything costs money, and so we have to figure out how we're going to fund these things and what the priorities of the town are. The water department really has put together a plan of conservation, which provides us with funding and other benefits that enhance our water system, and they are looking to expand in different well sites.
The town is completing a 4-year water improvement project, replacing 20 miles of the 110 miles of water pipe in town. Despite this project, groundwater continues to plague various homes and businesses. The water department is suggesting an aggressive flushing program to blow out the debris, causing the water to turn brown. What is your take on why it is still happening in our town, and as a selectman, how will you address this with our residents?
Yeah, I feel the pain on the brown water. It's unfortunate because it's also an indication that we're going in the right direction. As a new town, as a new area, all of a sudden gets brown water they never had. It's almost always because somewhere in the system near them, there's a repair being done that needs to be made. We have pipes from 1935 that, you know, flows like this. That's not safe for firefighting. It's not. We have to replace them. There's 110 miles of water pipes, and we are moving steadily through those. It should have been done, obviously, years ago. It's, you know, flushing. Honestly, this is one of those, this is a problem. Oh, sorry. Hello. Yeah, it's a problem. I think the only solution on this is to keep aggressively replacing pipes. I think when this program's done, we, as if I were selectman, I would argue strenuously and encourage everyone to continue with a mile a year. I think we need to continue at least a mile a year until we get our water pipes up to where they need to be. We can't just go through this project and walk away because it won't solve the whole problem.
Keith?
I don't think a mile a year will work. I think that's way too small, considering the problems that are out there. I mean, me personally, like Karen just said, she has groundwater. We don't even have a lot of groundwater, but we don't really trust it, so we actually have a Poland Springs dispenser in our house. And I don't think we should have to have that in our house, considering, we pay for the water. So I think we need to keep being as aggressive as we are right now. I think the blowout that you're talking about is, from what I understand from Kevin, is going to work. It's going to keep that sediment from rebuilding back up again. That's, like Karen was saying, she said 1930 something. I thought the pipes were back to 1919. They need to be blown out, and that sediment will stop. And hopefully, when they get enough of them done, the groundwater will stop. But I hopefully more than a mile a year. And the other thing I would ask is, I would ask Kevin and his water guy, starting the next meeting that I'm there, to show up at every selectmen's meeting and give us a report on what's going on in the water. And hopefully after he has to do that for 6 months in a row, and there's people in there beating him up with groundwater and whatever the other issues are, that we'll make real strides in this, because I just don't think as a town like us, we should have to deal with groundwater.
The roads have been torn up for the past 4 years due to the water pipe replacement project. Residents complain daily about this. Approximately $2 million was allocated by the town over the past few years from Chapter 90 monies and from the capital plan. What are your thoughts on further road improvements, and do you think more funds from the capital plan should be used instead of applying the funds to other infrastructure needs?
Yes, I'm fine with the funds coming from where they're coming from. But at a selectmen's meeting, I think 2 meetings ago, the biggest issue with when we do these water pipes is that we have to fill them back in and then tar them over, and then we have to wait a year for it to settle. And that's why the roads all get beat up and we're driving over and everyone's angry because we have to wait a year in between when we can pave the entire road as to when we pave that little patch. But Sean was actually talking at a couple of meetings ago that there's a new way to do it using clay instead of sand. And I asked what the cost difference was, and he didn't think it was that much. But if we can do this new system that they do, and we put clay in and then put the pipes in and then put more clay, we can pave them at the same time. We don't have to wait until a year later. So hopefully that whole issue of when you finish the street and you have to put a patch in it, that'll be gone, because we should be able to do it this new way and just do it right away.
Question?
Stop the roads.
Yes.
Yeah, anything we can do to speed up the process, we need to pursue it, because it's hard on businesses, it's hard on residents, and it's hard on patients. And I think we need to really ask the DPW to make sure that anything that can be done before the winter should be done, because then we start over when they get beat up by ice and plows. Back to the 1 mile a year maintenance, that I equate that to just like capital planning for all of our buildings and our maintenance of our building. We in the current water replacement plan, we're going to address a lot of the really bad pipes. But that means we need to keep going on the other ones. If we do 1 mile a year, you're not digging up whole neighborhoods and you're still maintaining the space. So I look at it more as the maintenance to keep up and get ahead of the work that needs to be done without disrupting citizens. And also it's a cost issue. There's only so much that we can pay for every year. And if we put it in as a capital expense for the water and sewer improvements, it'll be manageable bites that we can take out of the budget.
Thank you, Kim. There is an ever-increasing residential tax burden on residents. I think one of you mentioned earlier, 94% of property taxes are placed on the residents. What may be some ways to relieve that for the residents? Karen?
Can we alleviate that?
Yeah, or relieve the residents from the 94% tax burden.
Well, I think as I mentioned before, I think the number one thing to do is to really encourage economic development in the town and to aggressively look for ways to shift some of that burden away from the tax base. That's a long-term planning process, and it's something that's well overdue. If it means we bring sewer into North Scituate, if it means that we go forward with the plans at Greenbush, those things will help. As far as current tax bills, I know that the assessor is approachable and you can talk to them about your individual situations, but we can't make the bonds go away and we can't make paying for our services go away. So we have to find a way to shift some of that towards a commercial base.
Well, I combined like 3 of them, so,
I can answer that, just didn't want
oh,
to
sorry.
get off track.
Yeah. It's about the taxes. If the residents bear 94% of the burden of the taxes in town. Do you have any ways to alleviate that burden for them?
As Karen said, the bills aren't going to come down. I spoke to Nancy this afternoon, and there's no major bonds or projects falling off until 2020. So there's no reductions coming anywhere. I think Greenbush can be grown more than it is, and it will continue to grow. I think doing the septic or the sewer in North Scituate is important, and I already talked about that the pipes are already there, and one of the pump stations could be taken care of, and we could grow down there. I think Humrock, there could be some retail businesses put in there, but it's going to be a slow change, and I think it's going to stay around the 90% for a while.
So, we've talked a lot about the different problems in the town, ranging from groundwater to sand dunes, things like that. What do you see as the single biggest problem in our town right now, so you have to choose one?
It's somebody's
Yeah, it is Keith's turn.
All right. Somebody kind of asked this question the other night at the other forum,
Oh, I did.
which was, it's a great question. Like you said, there's a lot. I'm going to go with seawalls and foreshore protection, because if we don't protect what we have, none of the rest of it matters. And we need to fix those things that we have. I think the question was the harbor or whatever else it's going to be. We all know that tides are bigger every year, and it's not going to stop. It's going to get more and more. So I think we need to protect the assets that we have. And I think one of the main ways we need to do that is with seawalls or some type of foreshore protection.
Karen?
I think the number one priority facing the town right now is we need to find a very qualified and capable town administrator, because that position touches everything in our town right now. Long term, I'm cheating a little bit on another part. That's my number one priority. But we also need to really thoughtfully plan for our future. We're at a cusp. We have so many people attracted to our town, and we need to think carefully about planning and water and sewer and economic development, all hand in hand to make sure that we protect the character and the values that attracted all of us to the town in the first place.
We talked a lot about different projects, and there was a lot of discussion over we need new roads, we need new water pipes, we need sand dunes, we need schools, we need a lot of things. How do you propose to find the revenue to do the things you want to do? Or without debt exclusion, you know?
I think I alluded to this in my introductory comments. We do have a lot we have to do. And we need somebody that can have the skills and the experience to weigh all of these options and to find creative ways to fund all of our priorities. Some will have to be, I don't think there's a single answer to any of them. I think all of the problems have to be looked at in whole. I think my expertise in finance and creatively finding funding for other projects that I've been involved with will help advise the board on ways to look about funding things we need to do other than just simply asking for an override.
If you look at the entire picture and what has to be done, it has to be prioritized and it has to be spread out. Because there, as Karen said, there's no way we can do it all, and there's no way we can do it all right now. I think having people like Nancy that are finding these grants, I know the Harbor Master just got a huge grant for new pilings and new setup down at the marinas. The more grants and the more work that we get through these people, the better off we'll be. And the grants are out there. There is a ton of grants available right now with disabilities, and I don't think the town takes advantage of those right now. And that's one direction we can go, because we can use disability grants for a lot of things, because disabilities touch every building we have. And it's something that we don't do right now. But in order to fix everything, it's going to be planning and time.
You would be serving 1.5 years, which is the remainder of the term for this particular seat on Selectmen. What is your highest priority, and what are the top 3 things you hope to accomplish during this 1.5 years? No. Giving a second to think.
I know I keep going back to this, and it's not something that you can hold in your hand. But if you talk to the people from the town right now, the morale is, it's awful. It really is. And I can give you 1,000 examples, and literally 1,000 examples, of people that have gone into town hall and asked for things and been told rudely and abruptly the pound stand, basically. And I just think morale is something that, I mean, like I said, you can throw senior center, you can do whatever you want up there as the most important thing, but I think getting the morale back and getting people to want to come to town hall and to want to work again, I think that's pretty important. Top 3 things that I want to accomplish. Senior center, I think, would be one. I think that needs to be done one way or the other, wherever it's going to be, or whatever building it's going to be in. Ambulance, the second ambulance, I think that's a no-brainer. It has to be done, and it should have already been done. And I guess I'd go back to seawalls or wads, or however we're going to make it. Again, we can talk about, I don't remember what Karen said a few minutes ago about what she thinks was the most important thing, but if we don't keep the water out of the town, it doesn't matter what all these other things are. We have to keep the water out of the town. So I think the seawall and the protection, the ways of protecting us is one of the most important things we can do.
Karen?
Year and a half?
Yeah.
So I believe in really looking at actionable things that we can accomplish. And if I had to pick 3, I would say to the point of improving town hall communications both within the town hall and outside of town hall is to implement a comprehensive public relations plan to incorporate all those elements and be able to provide people with the information they need to govern and to live here. I think we need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and look at the master plan for the common. And what are we going to do with all the elements that are out there flying around? We had a great master plan that we have been marching along on, but now we've got to have an empty gates, potentially empty town hall, and if we want to build a senior center, if we want playing fields, we need to look at that right now as how are we going to get there and what do we really need. And the third is, I've gotten very excited at the process of this campaign, is to really redevelop the Harbor Community Center into a visitor center to attract tourism and provide waterfront access to all of the community. And that's a disused building that we absolutely have an opportunity. And I think we can do it in the near term, and I think we can do it without spending a lot of money.
Patricia? What do you hope to accomplish during your term on the planning board? We have to keep you awake over there, so you know.
In a year and a half, I think that we need to really talk about master plan. I'm going to agree, Karen, that our master plan is just globally content. And if we do nothing else on the planning board, is to please encourage the board of selectmen and the town administrator to look at all of the master plan, the bylaws, zoning bylaws, personnel management book that we need as best practices, which we do not have right now in the town of Scituate. So every town excels with the best management practices. There's a lot of really bright people here. We need to retain these people. But the other thing that I think is really important is we need to make the town affordable again. And how we do that is more than a year and a half, I'm sorry to say.
So, before we close out and give the candidates their final statement, I do want to thank everyone for not winning Powerball last night, so you could spend the night with me. I promised my daughter I'd make a joke. If you are unable to make it to vote on election day, absentee ballots are already available at Town Hall during normal operating hours. The ballots will be available until 12 noon the day before the election. Election day is Saturday, September 16th, and you may vote from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the high school gymnasium. Thank you to the Scituate Historical Society and the Scituate Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to host. In closing, I think Karen, you went first, so Keith will go first this time, and we'll give you 3 minutes to readdress some issues or address other issues that weren't brought up, or say whatever you want.
It seemed like everything I was talking about was not like things in hand. And again, if you've talked to the people in the town, I keep going back to morale, but it's just horrible right now. And we really need to do something to make that better. All those things Karen spoke about, fixing this, fixing that, fixing this, they're all going to get better on their, some of them, or most of them, will get better on their own as people start to feel better about their job and what they're doing. And I just hope that the new TA, again, if they let it go long enough so that even Karen or I have some input in who will be in there and who will take that position. I think this town is awesome, and I think it was misdirected for a few years. Again, not financially, but personally. And I think we need to fix that so we can move on as a town. A lot of the other stuff will fall into place. We need to do stuff with retail, we need to do stuff with seawalls, we need to do stuff with everything. But if the people aren't happy, they're not going to work, they're going to leave. And somebody just said you have to have good people and you have to retain them. We haven't been retaining our good people. So I think it's time to do so. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and please get out and vote.
Thank you, Keith.
I want to thank everybody for coming out on Thursday night. And I want people to understand that the planning board, we sit in the org chart right here with the Board of Selectmen. It is an important position, it's an important board, which has a lot of decision making. We need to make sure that we have people who are invested and who are interested to run the town. I'm lucky enough that I've been retired. This is always passion for me. I worked a crazy lot of hours, like we all do. And when I retired, I decided that this would be my hobby. And it's more than a hobby for me, it's now an application. I want to see the very, very best of the town that I came to in 1970. I want to see it continue until 2070. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you, Patricia.
Okay, this is yes, thank you, guys. This is great that everyone came tonight. The last candidate's forum, I think there were 12 people, so well done, Linda, awesome. We talked about a lot of important things tonight, and you're going to have to make a choice on September 16th. What our voters need to consider is who's better suited to provide the leadership the town needs, who has the experience, the background, and the skills to make our plans a reality. I've already already talked about my experience and how I've already accomplished one great event for this town in building the library from start to finish. And I would like to use those skills and that experience and my expertise to tackle some of the problems that we are now facing that we talked about tonight. I hope that you'll consider voting for me, but I also, whatever you decide, I hope everyone will come out to vote, whether by absentee or on September 16th. If you'd like to know more about us, there's information out there. I have a website, KarenCanfordBOS.com, and if you're interested in joining Team Canfield, I'd love to have you aboard.
Thank you. So